drawer blanks fronts have to fit the opening very closely because I want to end up with a 1/16 of an inch opening or gap around each side of the drawer. So they have to be cut very carefully before I do the dovetails in order to make them fit correctly. I'm going to cut one set of dovetails on one end so that I get a better feel for how much length the dovetail will subtract from the width of the box. In addition to that, when you cut the sides, they will have to be the same height as the front blank. When I'm cutting the sides, I also have to cut a notch that accommodates this rail to hang the drawers. So I need to get those notches in the sides positioned correctly. You can see here I have measured the case in its finished form to get actual measurements. This takes into consideration all the different irregularities in the construction technique. So you can see that I've got 3 columns for the top, middle, and bottom drawer, the front of the drawer, the middle of the drawer, and the back of the drawer. My carcass isn't perfectly totally square, but it's off only by about a 1/16 front to back, so I guess that's not too bad. But nonetheless, I have to take that into consideration. So these are the measurements I took on the inside of the case, and I'm using those to determine how to build the box. Down here at the bottom, you can see just a hand scribbled sketch of what the sides are going to look like. Here's a side piece, and you notice it's got a notch in it, a notch in this side, and those are where the drawers will hang. So I have to build the box width to accommodate the depth of these notches and the amount of projection of the white plastic sliders. Those sliders not only will control the drawer top to bottom, but they will also position the drawer left to right. So I expect those notches to actually rub on the sides of the strip as well as hang from the top. I'm now going to form up the drawer boxes for final machining of the dovetails. Before I do that, I want to make sure I get all the edges organized, number all the corners. So I'm going to start with this corner, and I'm going to call it A. And I'm going to put the letters on the top because it makes a difference to get them reassembled in the way they're drawn. And D. All right, now I'll set this up and cut the dovetails. I've finished the dovetails for the back of the drawer boxes, and next I want to cut the slots in the side that will ride on the side supports for the drawers. So I'm going to groove these drawers before I cut the dovetail for the fronts. So I'm going to mark all the sides with a mark just to make sure once I disassemble the boxes that I don't get the grooves on the wrong side of the wood. Anyway, once these boxes are grooved, I'll be able to fit the drawers. Then I'll be able to adjust the size of the front piece before I cut the dovetails. I've set one of the drawer sides in the carcass, and I'm going to just mark from the guide bar where the location on the board, and then I'll use this. I'll just mark one side, and then I'll use that same setting for the other side. So I'm going to use this bottom edge as a reference. So I'm going to mark a B at the bottom just to make sure I use that reference. Set that, see how it fits before I cut the other one. I'm expecting these to fit tight, and they will have to be planed a little bit to refine them. It's in there, but it's real tight. Some of these plastic strips are a little wide because when I set the screws in there, they spread the plastic, so I'll have to check those screws. It looks like the height is right. Fits on there tight, but I've got just about a 30-second clearance at the bottom, so I'm going to call that good. Cut the second one. I'm getting ready to put the dovetails in the drawers, and I've been experimenting a little bit with the type of joint. And one issue I have when I'm making drawers with through dovetails is how to get the drawer front exactly the right dimension to fit the opening when it's all assembled. Instead of cutting the dovetails flush with the side, I'm looking at leaving a slight overhang. So you notice how the dovetail board is not parallel to the side board, and that gives me some room to plane off this piece here to make it fit the opening. So I'm experimenting with different kinds of joints. All right, there's the pins board, and what I did, these only needed to be about 5/8 inches deep, but instead I cut them about 3/4 of an inch deep. That way I'll have a little extra wood in there that I can use to cut off the edge when I'm fitting the drawer front. Fit the boxes into the case and checked for the high spots where the drawer rubbed on the case frame. Then using a plane, I cut off the excess wood. I had to do this process several times. Each time I'd find a different rub point and file off that wood. My shop doesn't have the best lighting, so I used a flashlight to examine where the drawer box pressed against the frame and find the places that needed to be planed off. I found that the drawers rubbed on the UHMW slides and bound up, so I have to make the grooves a little deeper in the sides, so I'm using a router plane to deepen those grooves on the edge of the drawers. the way the carcass came out, the back is just ever so slightly narrower than the front. So I have such close tolerances on these slide rails here, I'm going to have to cut a little bit off of the grooves. But you can see it's mostly finished. Slides pretty easily till about the last 2 inches. So we'll keep working until we get that worked out. Here you can see where I let the dovetail pins extend 1/8 of an inch beyond the side of the box. And now I'm going to cut those off and use that last piece of the extension to custom fit each drawer to the opening in the carcass. I found it was a good technique to determine where the box needed to be planed to insert a piece of paper in the groove between the drawer and the carcass and slide it until it bound up. And then in the area where it bound up is the area you would have to plane to remove the wood. This way you could just successively move along and find one more tight spot after another and remove them each with a plane. Looks like the bottom clears now. A little bit of interference here. I haven't trimmed the edges yet on that end grain. I'm doing that last. So I'll take a little bit more off of that top edge. Okay, that looks like it's good there. Now I've got the side grain. It looks like really the only place I need to take off a little is right up at this top corner. Looks like that might be a little long right there. Down to about here. Try a little plain cut, real fine cut with a low angle plane. And let's see if I can cut some of that off. And then I'll resort to sandpaper. Yeah, that's going okay. try that out. Okay, still needs a little more cut off in this area, down about that mark still. Drawer has a little side-to-side play in it. So I'll take off a little more from the top edge, and then I'll put a chamfer on the whole piece here to kind of guide the drawer in. I finished fitting the drawers now. Got a good line around each one of the drawers, and they slide in and out easily. So next stage is to apply the stain. I already have a stain in the first 2 coats of finish on the carcass, but so now we'll put the stain on the drawers. Well, I'm down to the last few operations. Next thing I want to do is fit these drawers so they're flush. I've got all the finish on, final coat of wax, and I need to make these drawers as plumb as I can with the front mullions between the drawers. So what I do is I line them up till I like the way they look, and then on the back side I will install some stops. I'll glue and brad a stop here and at each drawer to prevent the drawer from coming back further than. Alright, we've got the drawer stops ready. I'll glue and brad these on. This will stop the drawer from coming back too far. Check that one, it may have moved a bit.
Sorry, I was standing in front of the camera there. Well, this is the process for fitting drawers. You just repeatedly find the interference between the drawer and the case and remove the excess wood with a plane. I used a low angle block plane, a shoulder plane, and a router plane to get these drawers fitted. Thank you for watching my video, and please subscribe to WAM Design channel. Thank you.